You are listening to the Move the Dirt podcast. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical, legal, or any other professional advice. You should always seek advice from an appropriately qualified and experienced professional.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today I'm joined by Phil Escott, who is a gentleman that I met at the War on Health conference. In fact, Phil was one of the organisers. So good afternoon to you, Phil. Thank you for joining me today. It's lovely to see you again.
Hello Bill, thank you for inviting me on. Great to see you again too.
So for the listeners, Phil, as I just mentioned, has an absolutely fascinating story about his own health and how he used predominantly diet and other allied health therapies to recover from quite severe arthritis. So Phil, would you like to start off by introducing yourself to the listeners, and then perhaps we could dive into your own journey in greater detail?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's been a long, strange journey for me because I'm where are we now? 9th of May. Well, I'm as we're recording this, so I'm 63 this month. And I've been really fascinated with health and diet since about 1980. And to start with, it's I was taken in by the whole sort of 70s, 60s, 70s thing of going macrobiotic. And so I'd grown up eating, a bit of cereal here and there, meat and 2 veg, roast on Sunday. It was, I was okay. I was fine. There was a couple of warnings. I had hay fever. Watch out, anybody who has hay fever. That can be a bit of a marker that there's possible tendency towards autoimmunity there. Not that autoimmunity actually exists, but we'll come to that later on.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was doing that, the sort of brown rice and lentils type of thing, and I didn't really notice the warning signs of the occasional sort of painful joint and constant farting, which is really a sort of marker for how your gut is rebelling against what you're putting into it. Much as the vegans say it's totally normal, I'm afraid it's not.
Right.
And so I started to notice around that time that I was getting these first little symptoms. I think sort of 1986 was the first rather, because I remember I got sucked into the TM movement, Transcendental Meditation. And so I was a bit of a yogi, and with that comes all the brainwashing about vegetarian diet. You're never going to get enlightened if you eat meat and all of that kind of thing.
Right, okay.
And I noticed that sort of hips and sacroiliac joint were starting to flare up a bit and hurt. Sacroiliac joint being the 2 joints at the bottom of the spine where they join into the pelvis, if people don't know. And I thought this was probably just from sitting in the lotus position for too long every day and bouncing around on my arse pretending I could fly, which the TM people tend to do.
Okay.
But it wasn't that, really. And so time rolled on, and then by the early 90s, I'm a drummer as well, and I could notice that there was something really going wrong with my wrist, and after a while I would have to dunk it in the ice bucket on the bar or whatever between sets because it was starting to hurt. And they diagnosed that as Kienbock's disease, which is a avascular necrosis, a crumbling of the lunate bone. It wasn't that. It was the start of psoriatic arthritis, but I didn't know that back then. Glad I didn't. Otherwise, I'd have probably taken their drugs. And that, this is quite a damaging thing. Over the course of the years, I've got that arthritis out of sort of 30 joints with no damage, but I've got one knee that's a bit trashed and one wrist, as you can see. There's that difference in movement
Right.
on the 2 wrists, but I've got a lot of the movement back that way, so I can play drums. I hardly even notice it. But yeah, it went on for a long time, so it caused some damage before I figured out what was going on. And yeah, late 90s, I sort of started to reintroduce some chicken and eggs and things like that into the diet, whereas it was mostly lacto-ovo vegetarian really for those years, because I was running a gym. And I was training very hard, very heavy, and I thought my body was telling me I needed some protein at least. But I never really got lean. I got big and muscly, never particularly lean, never particularly overweight, not a huge amount of fat, but I never got abs, however much I trained, however much I rode bikes around, wrote articles for mountain biking magazines, all that kind of thing. Never got lean.
Right.
And then in the 2000s, I just started eating rubbish, really. You know, I didn't really think about it. I'd sort of have, 3 bowls of crunchy nut cornflakes for breakfast, a load of cheese on toast, and then I'd probably have some pasta and cheese for lunch, and then try to be healthy and have a load of rice, dal and veg in the evening. Enormous amount of food as my body was searching for nutrients in the middle of all that rubbish. And, I was living on antacids, lots of reflux, that kind of thing. But it was still mostly plant-based, if you like, but sort of, again, lacto-ovo, but not particularly well put together, if there is such a thing, which these days I don't really believe there is. And then it really hit me in 2010 when I just got back from a holiday in Thailand. And I looked very different then. I was a big chubby bastard with 4-foot-long dreadlocks. And I came back and one ankle absolutely blew up, then the other one, then the left knee, and then loads of other joints. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? So I did, first of all, go to the docs and rheumatologists. Dreadful bunch of people. Absolutely no idea. Never cured anybody of anything. And very aggressive when you challenge their knowledge.
Right.
I knew I was going to find a way out of it, but I didn't know what it was then. But because I was plant-based, I thought, well, the answer is to go more plant-based. So I went vegan, then raw vegan, then fruitarian, and I was having, the fruitarian was the last bit, but leading up to that, I was doing ridiculous things like massive amounts of spinach smoothies every day, thinking green juices were good. All that did was leave me with kidney stones from the oxalates.
Right. Okay.
And it didn't really help, although I ended up emaciated with a little belly. So I thought there's something wrong here. I was doing a load of fasting because it was the only way I could get inflammation out of the joints. Every time I came back to eating food, I was in crippling agony again. So the combination of the veganism and the extensive fasting, sort of up to 11-day water fasts, that kind of thing, really lost me all my muscle. And then I really looked into it and I thought, no, we need to eat a load of meat. We've done this for 2.5 million years, if you believe the timescale that we've been given, which I'm not sure about. But, the indigenous tribes eat like that, and they don't have any of these conditions. There's no Garden of Eden out there. There's no sort of forest of mango trees. There's no sort of ripe bananas that people can pick off the trees and eat all the time. Even at the equator, it's impossible to live off plants. And obviously up in the north, the tribes are on 100% meat. So anyway, I went keto, which involved mostly lots of fatty meat and just a few healthy veg, in inverted commas.
So the keto diet, Phil, just for people that perhaps are not aware of it, that's a combination of vegetables and meat. Is that right? No.
There are many versions of the keto diet, but basically it's a diet where you're running on fats and not carbohydrates. Right. So the body will run on ketones. And that was a great improvement. I lost the last bit of belly and I ended up absolutely ripped, proper abs and everything. And I realized I ended up like that, doing no exercise and lying on the sofa still in quite a considerable amount of pain at the beginning. So I thought, right, everything we've been told is wrong, even the whole calories in, calories out thing, because I was stuffing myself with fatty meat, probably eating more calories than I was before. And as Bart Kay will tell us, calories don't exist either. They're just a measurement of heat. It's pretty much nonsense. And the pain started to go away. By 2013, I managed to train and put some of the muscle back on over that winter. And then I think it was 2014, I wrote my book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. And at that time, things were looking up hugely. I was sort of 90+% cured, the occasional little niggle here and there. But it wasn't until 2015 that I realized I felt much better on the days where I didn't put any of this so-called healthy veg in with the meat. And, I wasn't even eating much. It was just a bit of broccoli, cauliflower, like asparagus, things like that with the meat. Felt much better without, so I just thought I'm giving it up and went fully carnivore. And it's 10 years now that I've been fully carnivore. I'm still waiting for scurvy. I'm still waiting for heart disease. I'm still waiting for any problems whatsoever.
Right.
And, I brought my youngest son up like that. And he's 10 this month and unbelievably healthy. He says he's off school today with a headache and feeling sick, but he's very rarely sick. So I say that, but it's very rare. He's incredibly healthy, really strong, supple, incredibly heavy as well, but no body fat. It's like, well, not much.
Sure.
And he's just solid, the muscle and bone density, incredible intelligence, and he's hilarious, he's athletic, he's supple, he's just incredible, and people like me are supposed to have defective kids at our age. My kids have just got healthier and healthier as they've gone along. My oldest son is 35 this year, lives in Bali and Thailand, and he had a hell of a lot of problems around Peter's age, around my youngest age. He was way overweight. He had an aneurysmal bone cyst and had to have surgery to remove a whole vertebra, not just the disc, but the whole vertebra, and replace it with bone grafts and sort of titanium scaffolding that's in his neck to this day. Right. We did our best, but I suspect that was because we brought him up veggie. But yeah, so I have no problem with kids eating like that. Often people say, well, what should kids eat? Should they eat carnivore? Well, are they human beings? What do young lions eat? When they get weaned, they eat meat. Same with humans. And yeah, it's quite incredible to see the health that he's got. So yeah, that's my story really. And so now I organize events and do online stuff and do consultations for people to help them out of autoimmune conditions. And a few other things, putting together a new health portal.
Arthritis was effectively resolved through diet, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah. It resolves because these autoimmune conditions are, well, there's many causes for them. Anything that disrupts the mitochondrial function. So things go wrong in the cells. That's true for cancer as well. And that can be all sorts of things. Messed up circadian rhythm, stress, too many EMFs, artificial light at night, bad relationships. I mean, millions of things, really. But at the root of it is leaky gut. So once the gut becomes leaky and the tight junctions in the gut open up, undigested proteins get through into the blood that cause chaos. The body develops antibodies towards it, and so it will attack those. But then, when they're lodged in somewhere, like in the synovial membrane or whatever, in the joints or in the thyroid, in the case of Hashimoto's, or in the dural sheaths of the nerves, in the case of like Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, then the traditional thing is it says the body is attacking itself and we don't know why. And so we need to shut down this inflammation. Well, that's what the medical systems say. The body doesn't know how to work against us. The other theory is that those proteins go through and certain molecules in the proteins look similar to certain molecules in bodily tissues, so the body attacks those as well. Well, this can't be true. It never rang true for me because the body really isn't that stupid. It's called molecular mimicry. It's a better explanation than the traditional rheumatologists put out so that they can sell their dangerous, deadly drugs to shut down inflammatory pathways, because there's no such thing as bad inflammation. As Natasha Campbell McBride pointed out on my Red Pill Buddhas podcast, if anybody wants to have a look at that episode, was amazing. She was brilliant on that. And the body inflames to get rid of toxins. And if you're still pouring toxins in, that inflammation is going to carry on. But what's actually happening is, Anthony Chaffee was at our Spanish conference in October.
Yes.
Part of my talk was that there's no such thing as autoimmunity, and I thought, some of the doctors there probably have a go at me for that. But then Anthony got up and he said exactly the same thing. He came up with this explanation for it that I thought was great. Now, the body develops antibodies towards these proteins, and it keeps those antibodies when the gut is fixed, and after a while, when the body's cleared these toxins, the antibodies are still there, but there are no symptoms. So it can't be molecular mimicry. The body's not that stupid. If it was that stupid, it would carry on attacking things because the antibodies are still there. So this is what the rheumatologists don't understand. They don't even understand that there's antibodies or undigested protein or any of that kind of thing. So then when the gut's, you're sorted, you're away. There might be some sort of echoes of it because it takes a while after that for the body to clear those toxins. Just like if you turn the engines off on a ship, which is often the analogy I use, it doesn't stop immediately, but the engines are off. If you think, oh, well, this is never going to stop, I'm just going to turn the engines back on again, you'll never stop. But if you let it glide to a halt, eventually it will. And that's kind of the same thing that happens with autoimmunity. And I've seen it hundreds, thousands of times now, that people have fixed their autoimmunity by taking all plants out of the diet. And people say, well, just carnivore. There are several ways of doing carnivore. If you have diabetes, something which shouldn't really be classed as an illness, it's just a carb overload. If you eat pork, chicken, dairy, eggs, anything with no carbs, even some low carb veg, you're going to fix your diabetes. It's very easy.
Right.
Autoimmunity is a little bit more complicated because you've got a plant toxin issue, the gut's leaky, you've got to cut all of these things out, and pork, chicken, dairy and eggs are also not ideal. Milk can keep the gut leaky. It's not designed for adult animals. No dairy is. That's the one thing I agree with vegans about. Feel much better without it. Paleomedicina, who Zofia Clements, my friend at Paleomedicina, she's brilliant, and her colleagues there, and they've shown that the gut never truly heals, even if there's a small amount of plants left in the diet. They can tell this through gut permeability tests. And it sounds crazy if somebody's watching this with autoimmunity and their rheumatologist has told them, oh, diet doesn't matter. That's what they told me, and I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, They even tell people with IBS and Crohn's disease that diet doesn't matter. How can it possibly not matter? It's your gut.
Yes,
insane.
It's a very interesting point that you raise, because I lost someone very close to me relatively young to cancer. And when I came to the conference that you organised, and I heard Sophia talk about the work that she does for cancer patients, I was so taken back because, as you said, I mean, this person that I lost had also asked the question, should I be adjusting my diet? And they were again told, no, diet has no bearing. And then you hear someone like Sophia talk and you realise that actually she's achieving amazing things through diet with cancer patients. So, and I mean, that leads me on, Phil. My understanding is that you follow what is called a PK diet. Is that correct? And could you explain to us what that diet is and why you chose that diet?
Yeah, well, it took me a while, and I didn't really even choose it as such, knowing that it was PKD. PK is Paleolithic ketogenic. That's what they call it at Paleomedicina, but really it's what we ate all that time. Mostly we lived off ruminant animals before they became scarce, and we went on to smaller animals, and then went on to farming, and then our health collapsed about 10,000 years ago. But there's only one type of food that gives you absolutely everything you need and nothing you don't. And that's fatty meat from ruminant animals and maybe a few organ meats, maybe some small oily fish. But these are animals that have usually been fed what they're supposed to eat. Now, pork and chicken, the pigs and the chickens, they get fed a load of rubbish, soy, grains, and so they're not so ideal. The meat is not so great anyway. It's great food, better than any vegetable, and most people would be fine on it. But if you're really trying to reverse something serious, then it's really best to eat something that has everything we need and nothing we don't need. And that seems perfectly logical. Anybody would say that what is the ideal diet for any animal? Well, it's what gives them everything they need and nothing they don't need.
Yes.
And that is the only thing that gives you that. Now, people say I'm dogmatic or whatever. I'm not at all. I think people should eat exactly what they like. But just be aware that if you've got to heal something serious and you go and reintroduce more fruit and veg and that kind of thing, it's really not the right way to do it. And if I'd have known, I'd have had a great wrist and a great knee to this day.
Right.
If I'd have got onto it earlier, it was just the messing about and the lack of clarification of exactly what causes leaky gut back in the day. There's much more information around now. So many people are discovering this. So many doctors are coming over to it. Loads of people understand this. And so there's more information now. But back then, there really wasn't. And, of course, we're all subject to that brainwashing. That fruit and veg are great for you, they're essential, that sort of thing.
Well, that point actually brings me on to fruit and veg. It's something that I wanted to ask you about specifically because, as you just mentioned, we are told from when we're very, very young to get our certain number of portions of fruit and veg a day. And yet I've come to your conference and I'm all of a sudden I'm sort of in this world of people who, when I'm analysing in my mind what they're saying, it makes a lot of sense. And without exception, everyone that I met looked to be in fantastic health. You all look much younger than you really are. And I'm, as I've said before, I like to determine things by what I see for myself rather than what I'm being told.
But where are the studies, Bill? Where are the studies? That's what everybody says, don't they?
So if you were to be asked about vegetables, because we're told, vegetables are found in nature, as are meats. So why can we not, or why should we not be eating fruit and veg. How would you address that question?
Well, if you look at the diet, let's go back. What would you do with any animal? You'd just say, what do they eat in the wild? And you'd feed them that. It's really simple, but we've forgotten. And there's that expression, isn't it, that humans are the only species intelligent enough to make their own food and stupid enough to eat it. And so we do. We make things that are not food, and we live on them most of the time. You know, these combinations of carbs and fats that don't exist in the wild, and it's bad enough if it's double cream and berries. You know, that would never happen, particularly, that combination of carbs and fats. But when you get to something like a donut, which is seed oils that were invented as machine lubricant, processed grains with a load of sugar on the top, it doesn't really get worse than that. That is not food for any species, let alone humans. Right. So this is the sort of thing that people are eating all the time. And they're told, well, they're not told donuts are healthy, but they are told something like whole grain bread is healthy, you know, and particularly if you don't have any fat on it. So definitely don't put butter on it or anything like that. But then again, that is also a combination of carbs and fats. So it doesn't happen, except in milk, in dairy, and nuts a little bit towards the autumn. And that's what nature gives us. Now, why shouldn't we eat fruit and veg? Well, eat what you like, but note that none of these tribes have ever eat anything like that. They eat some tubers at times when the hunt fails. They eat some fruit seasonally, if it's available in their latitude. But nobody eats broccoli, nobody eats stalks and leaves of the plant. They all know how toxic they are. None of the veg and fruit, or pretty much none of it, that we find in the shops, existed more than 200 years ago. Just checking you're still there, Bill. Are you frozen? There you go, you've unfrozen now.
So the veg that we're seeing now, you just said was not around 200 years ago. So can you go into a bit more detail?
Yeah. Well, it's most of it is sort of, what's the word? Hybridized, crossbred from the brassica plant, you know, and these types of veg don't grow wild. You don't sort of come across a whole field of broccoli or something like that. It doesn't happen. And the tribes know how toxic the stalks and the leaves are. That's where the plant puts most of its toxins. And so they will eat some tubers sometimes if they're there, and you know, fruits. These things are seasonal though, and they're not available very often. In temperate zones they're only available seasonally. Even at the equator they are. In the north they're not available. In the winter they're not available. In ice ages, what did we eat? It certainly wasn't bananas and mangoes. So now fruit, because it's kind of natural, well, not what we get in the shops, but sort of berries and the occasional wild apple or whatever it is that you can find seasonally. These things were not available much of the time. And so we'd eat them, sure. I expect some people liked them, some people didn't. I don't know. You know, it's like the Inuit. Apparently people go, oh, they do eat plant food, they eat berries, but some of them ignore them. Some of them might have a few berries when they're available for 5 minutes in the autumn or whatever.
Right.
But a lot of them don't even bother, and they're still perfectly healthy, incredibly healthy actually. Not so much now when the Western plant foods have come through. They're as bad as the rest of us. But when they're on their traditional diet, they were fine. So seasonally we'd have had these things, but fruit is really for the benefit of the plant that we eat fruit. So we're all sugar addicts. We like to eat fruit. It tastes great. We'd have picked it off the bush, no problem. It doesn't have the level of toxins that vegetables have, but it's pretty high in fructose, so eating it every day is not very good. Fructose will blow up the liver. It's high in deuterium, which is a big subject, but just for now, it's there. And nature gives it...
Can you explain what deuterium is, Phil?
Okay, that's a long rabbit hole, though. I could come back to that, but it's basically an extra isotope on hydrogen molecules. So it creates heavy water, and the higher the deuterium content, the more it blows up the mitochondria and creates unusual cell replication, cancer, this, that. People are curing cancer just by drinking very, very low deuterium water, for example, without even going keto. But the lowest deuterium foods are animal fats, good animal fats. So it's another reason why it's healthy, and it doesn't give you cancer.
Right.
So fruit is high in deuterium. What depletes deuterium? Time, sunlight, that kind of thing. So nature has it right. The plant wants you to eat the fruit, so you go poo somewhere else, spread the seeds, and another plant grows, or a tree, or a bush, whatever. So that's what nature intends. The plant wants you to eat the fruit, doesn't want you to eat the leaves and stalks, because that kills it, or harms it at least. So nowadays, if somebody's up in a high-rise block of flats in the north of England, bathed in blue light, watching Netflix at midnight and eating a banana, it's very, very definitely not a health food.
Right.
So, as Jack Kruse says, if the light that goes into your eyes doesn't match the food that goes into your stomach, then you're going to have mitochondrial problems. The body knows what it's supposed to be eating at certain times of the year. However, all these plants, even the ones that wouldn't do us any harm in the autumn when we were healthy, when you are that sick and you've got leaky gut, it's very good to give these things up, at least for a period of time. Now, some people can reintroduce, some people can't. I don't feel good on other stuff anymore, so I don't eat it. But getting onto vegetables, if anybody wants to really look into it, just look on YouTube for a video by my friend Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and it's called Plants Are Trying to Kill You. Now, I've known enough about plant toxins never to want to eat a plant again for 10 years now, but that video that he brought out 2-3 years ago probably now absolutely blew me away. The level of toxins is incredible. Never mind the processed grains and seed oils that are obvious poison. I think most people understand that. But then they got the healthy veg. Now, there are 136 known human carcinogens in an organic Brussels sprout. There's 60 in the least toxic veg. This is botany. They go, oh, well, they're natural, they grow, it's whole foods, so is deadly nightshade. So are the mushrooms that will kill you. So there's all sorts of things that grow out there that will kill you. About 98%, I think it is, of the plants on the planet will kill you or put you in hospital if you eat them. Who's to say that these other ones that we get in the shops are healthy? They're not. There's goitrogens in broccoli and cauliflower, in those cruciferous veg that attack the thyroid. There's all kinds of things in there that keep the gut leaky.
Do we know why the plants have these toxins?
Yeah, they're defense chemicals. They don't want to be eaten. There are certain species that become adapted to certain plants. There's a bird that only eats one type of plant that would kill us. I forget what it is. Koalas eat eucalyptus. Pandas eat bamboo. But that would be no good for us. There's certain adaptations to these things. But the lower toxin veg are a slower poison, so we don't realise what they're doing to us. So over the years, we get sick. Oh, it can't be the broccoli. Can't possibly be the broccoli because I've eaten it all my life. Well, yeah, they're slower toxins, and some people have better redox potential to clear these toxins than others. Like some people particularly store oxalates, which are probably one of the nastiest plant toxins. And that oxalic acid forms into little sort of sharp shards of glass, like crystals, and it goes in everywhere, in the eyes, in the thyroid, in the prostate, in the ovaries, in the joints, and it's very difficult to clear out. It takes a long time to clear out, and it's very often when people actually go keto or carnivore that then they get problems with oxalates on the way out, and they go, oh my god, it didn't work for me, I got sick, I got kidney stones, I got whatever. Yeah, so did I, because when the body's not taking in oxalates, it goes up, there's a bit of a breather, let's dump some. And right. So, some people dump them, they don't notice. Just a bit of cloudy pee. And, I had Sally Norton, who wrote the book Toxic Superfoods.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
On my podcast. I was asking her about this. And because I had a kidney stone again in 2022. And it was 8 years since I'd eaten any oxalates. And she said, yeah, it can take decades to get rid of these plant toxins. Some of them, the oxalates particularly, some of them come out quicker. But the oxalates, horrendous things, really. And if you're a stone former, it can be a nightmare.
That's me.
You've had kidney stones?
Several times, yeah.
Right, yeah. So this can carry on into carnivore. There are ways to make the body dump oxalates to stop it forming into stones. Sally Norton has protocols on this with the citrate, some lemon juice, some potassium, calcium and magnesium citrate in certain amounts that can help the oxalates to come out and without forming stones. Does that work for everybody? I don't know. I really don't know. None of this is an exact science. But I'm far enough into it now where I can't be bothered with that kind of thing. I just think, well, if I do form another stone, at least the one in 2022 was small enough to pass, although it was still crippling agony, as you'll probably know. My God.
It's that for people that have never had one, it's one of the most horrendous experiences. I think my first kidney stone I had when I was about 20, and I literally collapsed in the street and I honestly thought I was dying.
You do, yeah.
I had no idea what was happening to me. As I say, it was my first. I've probably had, I would say, in the region of 5, maybe 6 episodes since I was about 20, and I'm now 50. So in 30 years, and every one of them has been absolutely horrendous. And I wouldn't wish a kidney stone on my worst enemy.
Have you passed them all yourself, or have you had the laser up the knob job?
No, the last stone I had, I went into the hospital. I was kept in the hospital. They gave me painkillers whilst I was there. They then released me with cocodamol. And when my wife very kindly went to the pharmacy to get them for me, the pharmacist said, "What is it for?" She explained, and he said, "What on earth are they doing sending you home with cocodamol for this type of pain?" But literally a few hours later, I was taken back to hospital, and they kept me in overnight. It's the only time, fortunately, I've ever been in hospital overnight. And I remember going to sleep, and I woke up to find that I had nil by mouth over my bed. And I remember looking at it and thinking, well, I'm sure that wasn't there when I went to sleep. And I asked the nurse if I could have some water, at which point she said no, because, and she pointed up to the sign. So I said, right, it obviously is for me. And she said, oh, you don't remember. In the middle of the night, we were going to rush you off to surgery. And I remembered nothing about it at all. I'd found the whole experience very draining. I was then under urology for a while. And I complained to the consultant urologist at the time that I still had pains coming from the same kidney, and regardless of that, they discharged me. And I still get the odd pain in the kidney now, but fortunately, I haven't had a stone now probably for about 5 or 6 years. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I got one wedged in the ureter it was stuck in there for about 3 months. They did the same thing. They just kind of left it. And it doesn't hurt all the time. It only hurts at the times where the body goes, right, we're going to start spasming and trying to get rid of it. And then it's appalling. But I never managed to pass that one, so they had to put that laser up my knob and then into the bladder and up into the ureter and smash it up, and then it came out. But second one, fortunately, was smaller, and I got rid of it myself, but the pain was similar. The kids were, I was rolling around the floor, and the kids were going, is Daddy going to die, to my missus? And I'm going, no, honestly, it's all right, I'm not going to die, but it's just... It's unbearable, and there is no comfortable position, is there? There's nothing you can do.
It's absolutely. I mean, the last time I went to A&E which was the day before they kept me in. It was absolutely packed in the waiting area, and I was literally on the verge of passing out. I've been in so much pain for so long, and they literally, with all due respect to them, I felt as though I was just left. It was clear that I was in excruciating pain. I felt incredibly guilty because there was an elderly lady that actually got off of her seat to offer it to me. And fortunately for me, there happened to be a consultant urologist in the waiting area with his wife who managed to grab one of the junior doctors as they were rushing in and out and said, that man has categorically got kidney stones. He needs to be seen now. I'd love to shake that man's hand because I was in so much pain. But something else, Phil, that I really wanted to ask you about.
But just before we leave the kidney stones, could I just highlight this to people? You've heard us now talking about kidney stones. What the docs will tell you is, you can't eat meat now. You really shouldn't eat meat. Protein's hard on the kidneys. Absolute nonsense. It came through for a couple of ridiculous rat studies, and protein has never harmed the kidneys. We see late-stage kidney disease reversed on this. So this horror that we're talking about is plant toxins. That is the healthy stuff that you're told to eat. The grains, the leafy green veg, that kind of thing. This is what contains oxalates, almonds, that kind of thing. So this horror that you've just heard of. This is the result of plant toxins, guys. Okay, so don't be fooled.
Right, that's exactly what I was told when I was discharged. Reduce your meat consumption, increase your vegetable consumption.
Absolute nonsense. That's repeat business for them.
Right. Okay. And so this issue I'd like to go on to next, Phil, is another food that, again, was quite surprising for me when I attended the conference, that there were many speakers saying you don't need to worry about salt. Salt, it's fine. You should be taking on board salt, although we're often told we shouldn't, or we should be reducing our salt intake. Can you talk a little bit about that for us, please?
Yes, it's complete nonsense. There's a book by a guy called James Di Nicolantonio, and I think it's called The Salt Fix.
Yes, I'm familiar with that book. Yes.
Yeah, so people should read that really to get to the root of what's been going on here. But table salt's not so great. Himalayan pink salt is not so great, although everybody thinks that's really healthy. But a good Celtic sea salt, the sort of grey kind of one that, very pure, and it's absolutely fine. You can have as much of it as you possibly want, and it will do you no harm whatsoever. Now, that is particularly important when you go low carb, first of all, because the body will dump more electrolytes. And so some people get issues with electrolytes when they first go. So you've got the keto flu, which people have, where before the body can adapt to fats over carbs, so people feel not so energetic. They've got some issues here and there. And then you've got the oxalate dumping thing and the plant toxin dumping thing. Sometimes people can get, they don't poo so much, or they get the runs, or as the gut microbiome sorts itself out, and the adaptation to fats as well. And then you've got the electrolyte issue. So a lot of people will find that they have some problems with electrolytes, and that would be sort of brain fog, twitching, spasming, palpitations. I was hospitalized with palpitations. They were so bad when I first went keto. My heart was sort of missing every third beat, and it was really scary. I kept thinking it was going to stop every couple of seconds. Scary business. So I went into the hospital and they said, right, you're not having a heart attack, your heart's absolutely fine, but it's probably just an electrical issue. They checked potassium levels, that was okay, so they just threw me out again. So eventually I figured it out, but it took me a while. I took a load of magnesium, that helped, but it was actually my son who takes a load of salt when he goes climbing. Because if he gets cramps, he just takes a load of salt in some water and it sorts it out. And I said, well, I put loads of salt in my food. And he said, no, put it in the water. Put it like a teaspoon into that much water, warms, like mix it up, swill it down, another bit of water to take taste away. This does miraculous things. If I'd have known that, I'd have fixed those palpitations within about 20 to 40 minutes, a couple of doses of it. And it would have been no problem at all. And I've not had any problems since then. So, yes, salt is actually really important when you first go onto a low-carb diet. Some people are absolutely fine, they don't notice. Some long-term carnivores have absolutely no salt. I think Anthony Chaffee doesn't put any salt on his meat anymore. And some people have it fully raw as well. Whatever you want to do. But particularly early on, salt can be very useful for electrolyte imbalances. And it's never caused any hypertension, it's never caused heart disease, it's just absolute utter nonsense. So we're told to avoid sugars and fats and salt, aren't we? These are the things that are demonized. Well, sugar, yes. Salt, no. And fats, well, yes, if they're seed oils, and no if they're good animal fats. But we're told, again, to avoid sugars. But it amuses me when people go, I'm giving up sugar. And so I don't have any sugar in my tea anymore. There's another thing which is high in oxalates. People who drink a load of tea very often get kidney stones. Okay. Tea's high in oxalates. And they have all this this idea that they've given up sugar. Well, what is a plant? It's cellulose. It's indigestible cellulose. It's carbohydrate. It all breaks down into sugars. How many sugars do you want nailed together? Oh, complex carbohydrates are good. No, they're not. This is what we call fiber. Oh, fiber's essential for good bowel movements. No, it's not. It rips the gut to bits, and eventually you kind of get addicted to it. So the more fiber you have, then the more you poo. But that's because the gut's wrecked anyway.
Right.
The secret to being regular is keeping the fats up, and then you're absolutely fine, and all the gut issues heal. I mean, we see cancer reversals, we see even bowel cancer reversals when you take all the fiber out of the diet. There's a book called The Fiber Menace by Konstantin Monastyrsky, and check that one out if anybody still thinks that fiber's healthy. And there's a study that we carnivores always like to point out here, and that's it was like about, I think, 64 people with idiopathic constipation. Idiopathic means that the doctors have no idea. The idiots have no idea what causes it. And so these are people already constipated, and they took all the fibre out of the diet. I thought they'd probably expect that these people would explode, right? It would be terrible, the worst thing to do. All of them got better. All of them. And it's the World Journal of Gastroenterology. It's stopping or reducing dietary fiber, something or other it's called. You can find it on PubMed. And the conclusion was we're going to have to seriously reconsider the role of fiber in the diet. And, it's another lie that we've been told. And people say to me, how do you ever even have a poo? And I just say, well, I haven't had one for 10 years. I just can't be bothered anymore. But in truth, I was on Sean Baker's podcast. We were talking about it. And I said, well, my turds now could be on the cover of the Bristol Stool Chart glamour calendar. So they're perfect. Right. Whereas, years ago, I was pooing several times a day and pebble dashing the toilet because I was veggie and thinking that was normal. And it isn't normal at all. And after a while, whatever gut issues you might have, first going carnivore or keto, they sort themselves out in time. And you will have absolutely no bloating, no farting, no stomach issues whatsoever. Just refer it to nature. There may be a load of studies about fiber out there, but compared to what? Somebody who eats a crap diet that also has low fiber, maybe a high fiber one might be better in that respect. But compared to what? Do they ever compare them to carnivores? No. Do they ever compare them to the Inuit and the Maasai? Are they constipated? No, they're absolutely fine, and they've been doing it for generations. And, to me, blowing up the bullshit about studies is, well, all right, hold on, let's refer it to nature. Yes. Does it tie in with what happens in nature? No, it doesn't. And,
nature seems to be something that we're going back to. You touched on earlier about circadian rhythms. What advice would you give to people about circadian rhythms, EMFs, reducing blue light, and how that also has an influence on health?
Yeah, well, it's real simple. Before we had artificial light, we lived outside and we had the seasons, all those cycles of different light cycles of the seasons, of the days, and this is what we're designed to thrive on. People say, well, it can't be that important, light. Well, if you think that the light cycles, the seasonal light cycles, control all of nature, what happens when there's a certain length of day, all the leaves come out on the trees like they are now? Nature flourishes, all the species start breeding. All of this stuff goes on, and it's all to do with light cycles and the daily light cycles as well. So in the morning, if you're out at dawn, you get the natural light in your eyes, and this triggers melatonin production. So then in the evening, as the sun goes down, the melatonin is released, so you get a good night's sleep. That's a very simplified version of it, but today we have these, well, they started off with incandescent bulbs that are not so bad, but now then it went on to strip lights, halogen stuff, that kind of thing, and now they're on these LED downlighters, pretending they're doing it to conserve energy. So you're getting more intensity of blue light from those bulbs, those sort of downlighters, than you are from midday sun. So what does this tell the body? It tells the body it's midday every few milliseconds. And this totally destroys the hormone cycle, the hormone production, hormone balance. And if, for example, the amount of women who work nights who get breast cancer, and
yes,
check my YouTube channel for my mother's breast cancer reversing on a carnivore diet with an iodine protocol. We see these things all the time. So you won't sleep well if you don't have proper light hygiene, if you like. So in our house, I get out first thing in the morning. Don't look at my phone. If I do look at my phone, it's on red. It's on completely red.
Sure.
It's switched off, on airplane mode. The Wi-Fi switched off. This is also a cellular disruptor. Any sort of non-natural EMFs, non-native EMFs. So I get out in the morning, hopefully get the melatonin going, or whatever other benefits happen from getting out early in the morning. As Jack Kruse says, never miss a sunrise. Even if I go back for a sleep later on, I'll always be out there if I wake up at that time. I'll just go straight out, get grounded as well. It's another bad thing we've got, not exchanging ions with the earth, another thing that the tribes do all the time. If they've got shoes, they're made out of natural animal skins and they conduct the ions. We have rubber-soled shoes. We're totally disconnected from the earth all the time. So, that's another important thing. So in the evening, you're not going to release that melatonin if you've got those downlighters on, whatever you've done in the morning. So one thing is to wear blue blockers, orange glasses, red glasses, really, that block all the blue out. Then again, the skin also has receptors. So it's best if you actually set your house up to do it. If you look at my Substack, which Bill, maybe he'll put some links underneath, but
yes,
on my Substack, I've got a whole article about how to get a better night's sleep. It's very simple, really. You just, when the sun goes down, don't put any artificial light on in the house. We have we have a screen over the TV that's red, kind of red, orangey red, and our TV looks weird to everybody else. Everybody else's looks weird to me because it looks like a sort of nuclear explosion. To me, it's horrible. Same with their lighting in their house. But we got 3 snakes in the living room. We've got a royal python and a boa constrictor and a corn snake, and they have little LED lights in there that I put on dim and low colours in the day, like a sort of orangey colour. So you're not getting, they're not even getting that blast, but I put it on very dim and red at night. So just the cages are glowing a little bit, the vivariums. And that's it, really. That's all the light we have. And it's really relaxing. When I go into somebody else's house in the evening, I find it almost unbearable when they've got those downlights on. And it's also even worse if it's coming from the ceiling. So the body's programmed to see that kind of light straight up. It knows where the sun is.
Yes.
You know, all these things in nature. And as it's lower, as the sun is lower in the sky, morning and evening, then that's what the body is used to seeing at that time of the evening. So, you know, if you've got lamps, little salt lamps are good. Those little Himalayan salt lamps, don't eat the Himalayan salt, but they're great in lamps. And you put a little incandescent bulb in there, and that's a nice little glow. Don't check your phone at night. If you get up for a pee, don't turn the bathroom light on. You know, I say to guys, sit down or pee in the sink. You know, don't worry about it. Urine's pretty sterile. It's better than turning the light on, and it's better than missing the toilet and getting into trouble with your missus for pissing all over the floor. So, you know, but just don't turn the lights on. What you can do, there are little things you can have. They're only a few quid. They're just, you go in, they got a little sensor. It turns on one little red LED. So you walk into the bathroom, you've got enough light to do something. There's always a way around it. It's not like changing your whole lifestyle and going and living in a cave or in a jungle. It's just there's ways that you can still fool your body into thinking it's in the correct circadian rhythm. And so, you know, I go out several times a day. After this, the first thing I'll do, I'm sitting next to the router here. I'm looking at, I'm not looking at so much blue light because I've got Iris Tech on the computer that takes a lot of the blue light out, and then you can do different settings for the evening. So the computer just goes red. That's important. And go outside and get grounded after this and get some sun. So yeah, the more natural light cycles you can get, it's all part of it. It's all part of the same thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Phil. If I could ask you just one further question before I ask you to tell us a little bit more about how we can find out about your work. If you could make one recommendation to people to improve their health, so you can only pick one thing for them to do, what would be your go-to thing?
Well, I'd say to go carnivore. However, I think most people are probably not going to do that if they're in a reasonable state of health, or they don't believe that it has anything to do with it, or carnivore is safe. I would say the number one thing to do is to cut all the grains and seed oils out of your diet. All vegetable oils, all grains. Just do that and you'll find a massive improvement. Even if you're still eating the toxic veg. You know, the grains and seed oils are absolute devils. Get rid of those, and that's not too hard for anybody. And you'll notice a massive difference.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'm aware that, as was the case where you and I met at one of your conferences, you are organising a festival later this year. I'm certainly hoping to get along to that myself. Would you like to tell the listeners about what's going on at the festival and how they can find out more information about that?
No, I'm not going to say anything about it because it's far too secret and nobody should know about it. Isn't that the way? You always have to say the opposite to get people to move. Now they're going, oh, let's have a look at that. No, seriously, come along. Yeah, it's in Rainford, which is in Merseyside, kind of Lancashire-ish, Merseyside-ish. And yeah, it's at a friend's pub. Now that sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's at a friend's pub. No, this is a very cool guy with a whole load of grounds out the back. Great big marquee for the talks, fire pits to cook all your food on, loads of room for motorhomes, camping. You know, we've got glamping there as well, so you can book your own glamping tent if you want. Amazing speakers. We've got Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. We've got the author of Gut and Psychology Syndrome.
Yeah, fantastic, Natasha.
Absolute rock star she is. We've got Richard Smith and we've got Stephen Thomas, you know, the absolute geniuses in England of nutrition advice. They know 100 times more about the science of it than me. I'm just a drummer who knows how to do it and the effects it has, and I've been through that. But these guys, I listen to them. You know, I was listening to one of their shows today where Anthony jumped on as well, someone that they did recently, and I was wandering around the house with it on headphones, and I thought, how the fuck do you know all this stuff? How does it go in and stay in? I listen to it, but it just goes in one ear and out the other, all those chemical pathways. But anyway, they will explain exactly why all that I've said is actually true. And we've got Nikita Stark on natural birth. So if anybody's pregnant out there, knows anyone who's pregnant, or who was actually born from a human being, come along. Because when you hear the horrendous things that go on around birth and pre-birth that start off either our health or our lack of health in life, it all starts with the diet of the mother and the lifestyle and the health of the mother and what happens in birth and all the ways we've been disconnected from our ancestral heritage there as well. We've also got Dr. David Unwin and Jen Unwin, his wife, and they are GPs in Southport, which is kind of close to here, and they're doing amazing work just reversing all the diabetes among their patients without resorting to the awful metformin and things that the drug companies tell them to give, and doing great work. It's lovely when the docs wake up. I think that's fantastic. I love it. So they're doing great work, and I'm really happy they're coming. And yeah, we've got some other great people. We've got my friend Mighty Goodson, who is absolutely brilliant on all the emotional side of things, because that's something we haven't got into, releasing old trauma, getting rid of fears. Why does a disease go into one place in the body and not into another? Oh, just luck, the doctors say. Why is my left knee bad, my right knee isn't? It's just luck. No, it isn't. It's to do with emotional blockages. It's to do with those subtle energies and why the body will not clear toxins so well from a certain part of the body as opposed to others. So Maidi's incredible on that. She's helped me so much that when I was ill, I've known her forever. She lives down the road. She's a rebellious TMer like me, who's seen through a load of nonsense about that. And so there's going to be some great talks. And the Daz band are playing, the terrible tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist band that I'm involved with Darren Nesbitt, who runs the Light Paper in England. So we'll be doing a gig on the evening of the Saturday. And on the Sunday, I think I'm going to get all my favourite monster guitarists together and do a great big jam and have some people along who will sort of start off songs and then we'll ruin them by taking it over with endless guitar solos. But I love it. I'm a sucker for amazing guitarists. I think music is incredibly healing as well, and so we're going to be having a load of that. But yeah, it's that's our conference there. I think it's extremely reasonable for the people that you're going to see there. There'll be some great food and lots of other things. There'll be natural movement workshop, breath work as well. So that's also very important. A lot of us are not oxygenated properly. We don't even know how to breathe properly. And yeah, so that's ancestralhealthfestival.com. But we'll put it underneath as part of my link tree maybe, because that will keep you informed. Or sign up to my Substack. I've got a lot of stuff on there. I do support calls every Sunday, Q&As. When I do a consult with people, then quite often then I can give them support afterwards every week. That's all so useful, because then you've got people who are not, right, he's 10 years down the line. No, there are people who are like a week down the line or a month or 6 months from them. And they're much more relatable too, and then you can see what they're going through, and things that I've forgotten happen in those early times, And so that's great to have those support groups, because a lot of people who go carnivore, their relatives and friends think that they're lunatics and they feel very alone. And so it's nice to get a community together.
Yes.
Whether it's online or better still at these festivals. We also do the Spanish ones, but I'm afraid that's sold out for November. I can't believe it's sold out in February after how good it was last October. And that's crazy, that one. That's like 3,000 for a ticket, and I sold it out in February. And no, I'm not being greedy. It's a beautiful resort, very expensive to hire, great holiday, and obviously I've got to fly all these stars in from all over the world. But I haven't mentioned it before on a podcast, but we're probably planning one for March next year as well. And I've got a few tentative yeses from some stars in the carnivore and keto world. So I won't mention who they are yet because it's not definite, but sign up to my Substack and you'll get all the news about any events and what we've got going on. And also I'm involved as a sort of practitioner manager, if you like, putting together amazing practitioners for a new project called Zesty, which is actually spelled XEESTY, by a drummer friend of mine who I used to know 40 years ago when we played little gigs like duo percussion gigs in little bars in Windsor, when you could do that without getting bottled off, back in the day, or attacked. And he saw an article, a daft article that was written about me in the Daily Mail of carnivore diet and libido and boners and stuff like that. And it was just ridiculous. And he saw this and he thought, oh, that's Phil, I haven't seen him. And he got in touch after 40 years. And I thought we'd be talking about, tuning snare drums and what's the best Peisty flat ride cymbal. And, anyway, no, it turns out he's done incredible things, made an absolute fortune, and online and sold .com businesses and that kind of thing, and now starting up this new health portal with some great partners who are very aware of carnivore and keto. And so with my contacts, because I find that I know all these docs, amazing practitioners, they're all in my groups, like my Carnivore and Beyond Facebook group. And so I put some feelers out there, and so I'm putting together practitioners there. And so that's going to be an amazing resource because there's a load of finance behind it, and these guys really know how to drive traffic and get it to the top of Google. So hopefully we'll be, along with Sean Baker's Rivero project, hopefully we'll be taking over the medical system and matching up people to really, really good practitioners in all of these areas. And we've got sort of about 20 or so, and probably about another 10 coming. And these people really, really know their business. And you walk into a hospital and you got these ridiculous departments. Now, you walk into something like Rivero or Zesty, hopefully, when it's up in about a month or so from now, and you will find incredible people who really do know how to tell you how to fix your problems, whereas you won't find that in the medical system. So yeah, that's what I do. Links will be underneath. And please come along to the one in the UK. It's going to be a great time. I like these really informal festivals and events. I don't like being stuck in endless sort of talks in stuffy conference rooms in the middle of a city. I like them outside. People can wander around outside. But I think the thing that people like most about these live events is hanging out and meeting people. I mean, yes. You make friends for life. You get such good interactions. You have a lot of fun, and it's, come along and hang out. Sit around a fire and tell some stories.
Absolutely. And your book, Phil, if people want to learn more about your journey, where can they purchase your book?
Well, I'm ashamed to say it's on the satanic Amazon at the moment. I don't really know how to get it anywhere else. So, yeah, you can get it on there. And it's actually an audiobook now, I understand. I kept putting it off for years because I thought that's a hell of a lot of work, and then it's difficult to format it, and it's difficult for Audible, and I don't know how to do it. I kept on putting it off. I know everybody wants audiobooks now. I do. I used to read tons of books, and now we're all there with our headphones in, right? But make sure your phone's on airplane mode before you put your headphones in, guys, and don't use those ear pods, those buds or whatever they're called. What are they called? Earbuds. Horrible
AirPods, I think.
Yeah, something. Yeah. My kids are always saying they want, and no way am I putting Bluetooth straight into their little underdeveloped skulls. If I want them to have a brain tumor, that's exactly the sort of thing I'd do. But yeah, so it's on Audible as well, I understand now, and it was like 2 clicks. They just said, well, you can put your book on Audible now. Check out the voices. And there was one that isn't actually that dissimilar to mine, I noticed. And so I thought, okay, it's not me reading it. But I just went, 2 clicks, what the hell, 2 clicks, and it was an audio book. It's ridiculous what you can do these days with AI, isn't it? Scary, but it does have its uses. So yeah, that's out there, and that's my struggles with the system. And then the second third of it is about finding out what to do, and then the third part is really all the spiritual side and the sort of emotional balancing side and what went on there. So yeah, it's a bit of a personal journey, but it has some great reviews, and it's not that serious. It's pretty funny in places. I can never stay serious for very long.
My dad has recently read it, and he really enjoyed it. So,
good.
Yeah,
cool.
That's 2 of us now. Phil, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in August at the festival. But once again, thank you very much for joining me today.
You're so welcome, Bill. It's a pleasure.
Okay, bye for now, Phil.